Radio. So this morning, our Way to a Wonderful Life message is titled, God Never Fails, the Ready, Set, Grow Consciousness. God never fails, the Ready, Set, Grow Consciousness. But sometimes we come across books or movies or other written materials that we just can't wait to share with others. And after reading more of the writings of Mary Kupferle, a Unity minister and author, I immediately wanted to share what I had read. The beauty of her writings are the simplicity in which she explains profound spiritual truth. Now, we know, just as the great Joel Goldsmith said, there is only one truth, but there are infinite ways in which it is presented, because each and every person, we all live in an infinite individualization of the one spirit, the one life, the one intelligence, the one power, the one God. And so each and every one of us respond to things in different ways. So that's why these different presentations of the truth are so important, so that that right word, that phrase, or that statement that will enliven our spirit and give us a feeling of knowing the truth in a greater way. Just as Jesus said, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. It won't set you free if you don't know it. You have to know it. And to know it is to allow it to be made manifest in your mind. So these words are taken from Mary Kupferle's article, God Never Fails. She refers to God in traditional masculine vernacular for those who don't want to think of God as Him. You know, we know that God is consciousness, that God is the source of creation itself, that God is the energy. God is not a noun. God is an activity of life and intelligence and spirit and power working through us and working through all things in the universe. We know that's the truth, but we also know that this love and law of God guides us in all that we do, whether we're conscious of it or not. We may not be conscious that gravity is gravity, but we soon learn that gravity is present, and that we must align our mind with gravity, just as we must align our mind with spiritual truth, or all kinds of things will happen to us that we don't want to experience. So this is from Mary Kupferle's article, God Never Fails. She writes, all that we desire, all that we can ever envision or hope to attain is already provided for us. It is already available and will ever be awaiting our acceptance. This is true whether it concerns the body, the home, or the business, whether conditions and situations seem desperate and difficult, whether circumstances seem to be hopelessly entangled and confused, or whether the attainment of the desires and visions of our hearts seem impossible beyond hope of realization. The only condition on which this manifest good is dependent for complete outer expression is a condition of consciousness. As explained by one spiritual teacher and writer, the Spirit can do for us only what it can do through us. And so many people understand that, and so many people are teaching that we know that that's the truth. Unless we are able to provide the consciousness, Spirit, that is, the living Spirit of God, cannot make the gift. If the consciousness is filled with impressions of negative appearances, it is not the kind of consciousness that can receive the good gifts that the giver, the infinite, desires to offer to each and every one of us. If the consciousness is full of doubt and permeated by anxiety and fear, it is not the kind of consciousness that provides a free channel for the overflowing Christ heritage of goodness. For the overflowing Christ heritage of goodness. There is something we can do, however, to provide the right kind of consciousness, the receiving consciousness. This something we can do is not in any way a personal manipulation of thought by so many words and phrases that are uttered repetitiously and mechanically. It is rather a letting go and letting God. That is, a letting go of all preconceived thoughts and conjectures in favor of letting God reform, reshape, and remold our consciousness according to God's divine plan for all of us. Remember, all these good desires that come to us, these good desires are God's desires for us. If our desire is for wealth, that's God's desire for us. If our desire is for greater health, that's God's desire for us. If our desire is for greater success, a promotion at work, or whatever it may be, that desire is God's desire for us. And as long as that remains in our awareness as a desire, then we need to keep faith with it. We need to keep faith with it. There's something we can do to provide the right kind of consciousness, the receiving consciousness, and it is letting go and letting God. And in these words that she gives us, I'm reminded that Jesus said, I of mine own self can do nothing. I of mine own self can do nothing. So I wait for God to give me the good desire. I wait for God to give me the right guidance. I wait for God to give me the right direction. And until God does, I let it go. I let it go. It's up to us to claim within our own mind that divine right to receive and to enjoy and to experience every good desire of our heart that takes nothing away from anyone else nor diminishes anyone in any way, shape, or form, including ourselves. Now, this is something that we can do, this letting go and letting God. This process begins when we consciously close the door on our old misconceptions and allow admittance only to beautiful ideas and words of truth and life and love and peace. It then continues with our willingness to become consciously impressionable, pliable, and receptive to the divine inner power that is above and beyond our human understanding. We must take this into our mind. That's why Jesus said, when you pray, go into the closet. Shut out all the old misconceptions. Shut out all the old man-made religious dogma that tells you that you're not deserving, that somehow there's a heaven and a hell, and and there's no reality in realizing that God is love and unconditional love, and God is beyond and above anything of the nature of man-made good and evil. That God's unconditional love makes all things good in the right and perfect way, in the right and perfect time, no matter what it is that our yesterdays have been. So the Spirit itself will form this receiving consciousness within us, she writes, as we give it free access to our minds and hearts. The Spirit is more than eager and more than abundantly ready to remold, transform, and renew our consciousness if we will simply let it do so without any human forcing of the will. That's why the psalmist said, in a sincere, genuine prayer, renew a right spirit within me. Renew. He was talking to this infinite intelligence and power and spirit that we call God. He said, renew a right spirit within me. And that's letting go, and that's letting God. Renew a right spirit within me. So it's up to us to let this renewing take place in our heart, our mind, and our soul. It's up to us. So let's go back to Mary Kupferle. She says, help yourself to become receptive right now by giving yourself wholeheartedly to the presence of Spirit, to the presence of God. Speak quietly to yourself, saying, I now give my whole being, spirit, mind, body, and affairs to you, Father, to you, the living Spirit. I now let go and let you form in me the perfect receiving consciousness of myself. I can do nothing, therefore I willingly let you do the transforming that is needful and desirable. Mold my consciousness anew. I would be meek and lowly, humble and pliable to your inner working of good. I would be utterly flexible in harmony with your movement of love within me. Fashion me anew in mind and heart, as I would be impressionable and malleable to your desires, expressed through me according to your highest plan for me. I let go, I let you form the perfect receiving consciousness within me right now. And think about those words. Those are powerful words. That's putting our mind totally in tune with the mind of the Spirit, with the intelligence of the Spirit. Mind is intelligence. In mind we can analyze. In mind we can formulate ideas. We can accept ideas, reject ideas. We can dwell on good desires, or we can reject the desires that come to us, whatever it may be. So Mary Kupperle says, when you have spoken these words quietly and gently with your whole heart centered upon them, be still and let go and let God. Strive no longer to imagine what the results may be. Loose all, leave all, and let God move within your consciousness. God will remold, refashion, and recreate you, in you, the perfect receiving consciousness for life and peace and love and joy and beauty and wisdom and abundance of good. He says Jesus is the perfect example of the perfect receiving consciousness. Jesus is the perfect example of the perfect receiving consciousness. Jesus' manner, his attitude, his words, and his teachings never bespoke strain or strife or personal power or human willfulness. Jesus' life is an expression of a perfect, continual receiving from God. That's why he could say in all honesty and genuineness, all that the Father hath is mine, and it is the Father's good pleasure. He said the Father is Spirit, not a spirit, but Spirit, omnipresent, everywhere present, omnipotent, all power, omniscient, all intelligent. So it's the Father's good pleasure to give to you, that you is you and me. Jesus was the perfect channel, the perfect vessel, the perfect embodiment through which God could move and have his perfect expression revealed. And most of us want to be good givers. We are eager to share all the fine and lovely things of life with others, but we sometimes forget that we must take the time and thought for receiving. Being a good receiver is not a complicated task, but a matter of simple application. As one person put it, take time every day quietly to let God give to you. Be still, sit quiet, and simply say, I am ready to receive. I am ready to receive all my good. I am ready to receive all that is mine to experience. And I am receiving it now. I am receiving it now. Just as Jesus said, pray believing that it is. Pray believe that it's happening right now, right where you are. So learn to be a good receiver. Become open and receptive to your good through prayer, through affirming, I am receiving now. And as you do so, you open the gates of your mind and heart. You open the long closed passages of the soul. You enlarge and expand the cramped quarters of your being until they are amply ready to receive the bounty of God's goodness, prepared and ready for overflowing. In other words, God never fails the ready, set, grow consciousness. So do not let yourself become concerned about whether you have previously spoken or act or lived in a manner worthy of receiving God's good. Do not be anxious if you feel you may have taken many wrong steps or perhaps misunderstood God's guidance or misinterpreted his leadings. For nothing, absolutely nothing, in the outer world can prevent your and my acceptance of God's good, which is ever at hand, awaiting our claim. That's why Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Let's believe him. We may not be able to see, hear, feel, taste, or touch it, but in that sense of spiritual recognition and awareness, we know that it is at hand, that there's nothing that separates us from our good, because there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that separates us from God. If we are alive, if we're breathing, then God is with us. We are in God and God is in us. That's the truth for all of us. No place that we may go or be is beyond the reach of the ever-present one and God's goodness. No complication of outer circumstances can prevent this all-present good from reaching us, from lifting and sustaining and helping us. No human mistake can separate us from the constantly present goodness, everlasting, unconditional love of God once we acknowledge God's presence and accept God's presence as reality. So let's acknowledge and accept the presence and power and goodness of God right now without further delay, and all the good desires of our heart will start to become manifest in our life, right where we are, right within the circumstances surrounding us, right within the appearance, perhaps, of failure, right in the appearance of perhaps in the middle of the darkest human experience that we may be going through. The goodness of God and God's will, which is always for our good, is available. Let's not become discouraged that the results of our prayers do not appear to take the shape and form we think is right and advantageous. Remember, after Jesus arose from his prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, it was needful that he continue in his acceptance of the goodness of the will of God throughout his trial before the Sanhedrin, throughout much scourging and the ridicule of the angry mobs, throughout perhaps a human temptation to give in to the suggestions of all those around him. Remember, it was the religious of his time that went after Jesus, because Jesus was telling them to look beyond the man-made religions of the world, look beyond the man-made opinions about God, and to recognize that not only is the kingdom of God within you, but the kingdom of God is at hand, and that no matter where you are, no matter where you may be, each and every one of us can find our oneness, our unity with God, with the greatest good ever we can imagine, if we just let our heart be open to it. Just as Jesus let his heart turn to God in the quiet inner acceptance of the goodness of God, and to the truth that this goodness was never, 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 never absent from him. Jesus must have known that his part in bringing it forth was a faithful and constant acceptance of it as true and inviolable, and that each and every one of us have this ability to accept that presence of God within us. It's the Father's good pleasure to give to each of us the fullness of the kingdom, that is, the fullness of the good desires of our life, that will not only benefit us, but benefit those around us. Nothing so delights the Spirit within us and the Spirit that reigns supreme in the universe as the willingness of each of us to accept our good. Let's become an open and receptive channel from which the divine Spirit, the living Spirit, can move through us as livingness, as givingness, and forgivingness. And I recognize that it's our part to cultivate and present the constant receiving consciousness in order that we may delight in the experience of having this great good that God has prepared for each and every one of us. Let's always remember and never forget that God never fails the ready, set, grow consciousness, and so it is.